can you look up on your phone how to disable screen sharing on Zoom, please? Meeting settings. Oh, here, I did it.
Or does it pop up when people are typing?
It's cut off.
Can you just pull me off one piece of plastic wrap, please?
For where?
You just go right here. Great. What did I just do?
Hello.
I'm letting everybody in.
Hello.
Everybody's getting in here. There you go. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I see lots of aprons on. Good. That means you guys are ready to cook.
Absolutely.
John.
Okay.
Well, he's
Admit all. I've got a couple people that are joining right now. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Those of you that have been on the past couple weeks, you kind of know the deal, but just to let us in that I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone so there's not an echo. And then if you have a comment, you can type in the comment section, or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question.
Are you putting your face up there?
Not ready.
Is
But
Katie
yes,
on? Yeah. Get your present today. Get your present today. What?
thank you. You
The only thing you guys can do is, any of you have your phones connected to Wi-Fi, turn the Wi-Fi off, because I can't block you.
I muted myself too. So if you guys see that you're not muted, I thought I muted people as they were coming in. So if you see that you're not muted, go ahead and mute yourselves on the top of your screen.
Okay, I thought it was Wi-Fi.
All right, Richard Wells, I need you to mute yourself, buddy. Perfect. All right. I think that most everybody's muted. I just want to remind everybody that we're going to stay muted until you have a question, and go ahead and type in your question, or you can unmute yourself and ask me questions. Let me double check. There's a few more people. Okay. There's a few more people coming in, but I'm going to get going here. So the most important thing right now, guys, is make sure you have a glass of wine. Pour yourself a glass of wine. I'm drinking KJ Fulton Branch Chardonnay. Right? Cheers. Okay. So, thank you. A cheers to me. Thank you so much.
It's lagging.
I just want to make sure, mute all.
I guarantee.
Okay.
Flip and switch to where
Okay.
it's on mute.
All right. I think I got everybody here. Are you guys ready to make some pasta? Yeah. Okay. So, Orecchiette pasta. If you guys were here for 2 weeks or 4 weeks ago when I did my first demo with gnocchi, you guys can tell I'm Italian, mostly Italian, and you can tell by the way I do a lot of talking with my hands and get very excited. So making pasta is one of my favorite things to do. So we're gonna make orecchiette pasta today, which is little ears. And this is a really easy pasta to make, and I don't want you guys to get too on top. You know, they're gonna look a little bit odd, that's fine. The main goal when we start making them is that we want them to be just as uniform in size as possible, because then they're gonna cook in a uniform way. So that's the main goal, but we'll get to that. So like I said, the first part is you guys wanna make sure you have a clean, dry surface, like so. All right, your hands are washed. And again, I'm just gonna remind you guys, keep your wine close at hand, because part of the fun here is to make sure that everybody's got their wine throughout this whole fun experience. So I also wanna remind you guys to have water on your stove. So if you don't have a pot of water on your stove already, go ahead and get a pot of water on with salt, so you can make sure that we can test the orecchiette to make sure it's you know, it's cooked properly. All right, and then we're gonna get going. So I'm gonna give everybody a quick second just to get a pot of water on, and then we're gonna start making this pasta. Okay. Okay, mine's going. Okay, so here we go. I've got 1 cup of semolina, and I'm gonna just dump that right onto my cutting board. And I've got 1 cup of, I'm using 00 pasta flour. And I promise you I'm gonna go through all this with you guys about the flours. We're just gonna get this, we're gonna be kneading our dough for about 5 minutes. So I promise you, I know there's gonna be some questions about the flours. I'll get to that while we're kneading, because we're gonna need some time while we're kneading the dough. So we've got our dough, and then go ahead and get 3/4 of a cup of warm water, like warm water, like from your tap. Okay, so right now in our little pile here, we've got our flour, our semolina, and then you're gonna sprinkle a little bit of salt on that, about a tablespoon of salt, give or take. And then you're just gonna use your hands and just kind of mix that together. It doesn't need to be super mixed, just a little bit. Use your hands, get your hands dirty, but keep it in that volcano, that pile. And then you can use literally anything you have around you. So something I always have when I'm cooking is my wine glass. So look at that. I'm using my wine glass to make a little well in the center. And while it's in my hand, I'm gonna take a sip. So in this center well is where we're gonna put our olive oil and our water, but don't add all your water at once. So I'm gonna add my olive oil right in the center. And then I've got my water. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a fork, and I'm going to kind of slowly start incorporating as I pour the water. So you may not end up using all of this water. So that's why I say don't dump it all at once. So as you pour, you wanna be sure you're pouring slowly, but sometimes when you do that, liquid will drip down the sides of the cup. So just be sure, like I kind of hold mine almost directly over the center of the well. So when it slides down the side of the cup, it goes directly into the center. So you're gonna go ahead and as I'm doing that, I'm slowly using my fork, and it's okay if some of it gets out. So you've got a little bit of a paste happening here. You know, if some of it gets away, see some of mine went away, just use your fork. Your hands are gonna get dirty anyway, but the fork kind of helps you start that mess off. So it's not quite so messy on your hands. But you can see, like there's already a bit, you'd call it a mess that's happening on my cutting board here. So, and then I am gonna end up adding most of my water. Maybe, actually, I'm gonna leave maybe like a tablespoon in my cup. And once I have a little bit of a paste happening here, is when I'm gonna get my hands really dirty. So I'm gonna just scrape off my fork like that, and then you're gonna get your hands in there and start moving it around. kind of like the way we did the gnocchi a few weeks ago, but you'll see it feels different right off the bat. So go ahead and, you know, scoop your flour as you're doing it, and you'll get to feel right off the bat how wet or how dry your dough is. Mine feels tacky right now, but I still have a good amount of flour on my board, as you can see. So, and then once it starts like, right, I already have a little bit of a dough coming together. So once you have a little bit of dough coming together, you can use that to kind of pick up the rest of your flour. So I can tell by mine, even though my dough itself feels kind of a little bit tacky, what I have on my board, it's not picking it up. So I'm just gonna take that little bit of water I had in my cup and add that to the flour on my board like that, and then I can incorporate it all in. So at this point, right, I don't have much flour on my board. Now it's a dough, and it feels soft. Does anybody want to show me their dough? Or anybody have any questions yet that they might have about their dough? Is it feeling, if your dough's feeling hard, or if it's sticky, or if it feels dry? So hold your dough up if you got one. Gary and Pam. Gary, that looks pretty good. Is it a little wet? It looks a tiny bit wet to me. Summer, your guys's looks good, but it looks a little tacky too. You might need a tad bit of flour on there. So just add a little bit. Who is this? Miss Blunk, right? That looks good. I think once we knead it, that's gonna be really good. Miss Reiner, okay, that looks good too. I think once you knead it. Okay, Greg, I see yours right there. That looks a little tacky to me, but don't add any more flour. We're gonna knead it, and then you're gonna do it as you, we're gonna check it out as we see it. Justin, let me see yours. That looks good. Terry and Robert, show me your dough, Terry. Oh, that looks nice. I can tell from a distance. All right, you guys, you're looking good. So now is when, oh yeah, that looks good too. Who is that? Miss Fight, P Fight? That looks good. Okay, so I think everybody's dough is looking good. So now's when we knead. So I'm gonna show you guys for a few seconds how you knead, and then we're gonna talk about flour. So I'm kneading, kind of using my hand and like the base of my hand. So I'm putting pressure with that palm of my hand. And at this point, if you're kneading and it feels like it's really sticky, you can add a tiny bit of flour, but only add a little bit. Like mine feels a little sticky, so I'm gonna show you. I'm just gonna put a little dusting from my fingertips and add that into the flour. And then if I feel like I need a little bit more, I can just add a little bit more. But it's better to add it in really small amounts than adding it in large amounts, because you don't want it to be too hard. You want this to be a pretty soft dough. So you're gonna do this for 5 minutes, guys. So while we're doing this, I want to talk to you about flour. So keep kneading, keep kneading. You're going to earn your wine tonight. So I want to talk to you guys about semolina and double O pasta flour. So the reason that this pasta is made with those flours is because double O flour is made with, the double O stands for like the grind of the flour. So it's a much more finely ground flour, and it's higher in gluten, which you want for this kind of pasta because you want orecchiette to have a bite, like a chew to it. So that's why double O flour. If you use all-purpose flour, that's fine too. But if you can ever get your hands on double O flour and you like to make pasta, it's worth it to invest in some of that for pasta making. Now, semolina, I had a question. Someone emailed me yesterday if they couldn't find semolina. That, hold on, let me see. Summer? Yeah, you just got, I think if you need that, Summer, it'll come together. Just put your elbows in it, girl. You got it. Okay, so semolina is like, it's a really high gluten durum flour, and it's got that beautiful yellow color. So not only does it add a little bit of, that color to your pasta, but it's a little bit nutty in flavor. I mean, not enough that you'd, I think, see a huge difference, but I got a question yesterday from someone who asked if they couldn't find semolina, what could they use? And in this case, you could use like bread flour or whole wheat flour because, again, you've got, there's higher gluten and higher elasticity in those flours, which is what you want. If you made this without that, it would still work. You'd just end up with a little bit of a softer pasta. So that's why these, these are good to have. The semolina and the double O are really good for a pasta like this where you want a little bit of chew. Okay, everybody stop. Have a glass of wine or have a sip of wine. Right, we're earning it today. So I want to see, like, I want to show you guys my dough. You can see that I'm able to touch it. It's not sticking to my fingers. It's fairly soft. But you can feel it, like when I go to pull on it, I can feel that there's elasticity happening. We're gonna need another couple minutes. And I know this feels excessive, right? This is like, oh my God, we're kneading this dough for so much. But what this is doing is developing the gluten so it has that chew, so it has that bite. And you know, when you have a pasta that is meant to have that bite and that chew, you want it there, it's important. So we're just gonna knead here for a few more seconds. And then what we're gonna do is let our dough rest for a few minutes while we get our sauce started. In a perfect world, you make this dough, and some chefs would even say to let this dough rest for an hour. And you can do that. You can make this dough and you can let it rest for half an hour or an hour if you wanted to. Let me admit. But in this case, we're just gonna let it rest a few minutes. But if your dough feels hard, resting it a little bit longer will help it to kind of relax a little bit. Okay, is everybody done kneading? Are you over this part? Okay, so right now your dough should be in a nice little ball and look like this. And now let's just set it aside, but wrap it in plastic wrap. It doesn't need to be, it can be loose plastic wrap. We just don't want it to dry out. So just wrap it in a little sheet of plastic wrap. You can even cover it with a dish towel if you want. We're just gonna set it off to the side, but keep it room temperature. Okay, I have a question already. What's the maximum resting time? I wouldn't rest this dough longer for an hour at room temperature. And if it's warm out, I definitely would rest it less than an hour. But if you are gonna you could make this dough just to this stage and plastic wrap it and put it in a Ziploc bag really airtight and probably hold it in a day until you then used it to make the orecchiette tomorrow if you wanted to. Beyond that, I wouldn't let it rest too long at past the hour though, because I think then it might be too soft to actually make the shape. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, we're gonna travel over to the stove for a minute and I'm gonna show you guys how to start our sauce. So the point here is we're gonna let our dough rest for a few minutes, start our sauce. So then once our pasta's made and ready, it's just a real quick finish and then we get to eat a little bit faster. So follow me. Okay. I also haven't said to you guys, welcome to my home, by the way. Thank you for joining me. What a hostess I am. I didn't even welcome you all in. So thank you for letting me into your homes today and to joining me in my own home. Okay, so I've got my stove here with my pan, and I'm gonna go in this pan directly with my pancetta. Now, if you can't find, pancetta is Italian bacon, otherwise known as deliciousness. Now, if you can't find pancetta, bacon's fine. It'll work. And what we're gonna do is, we're gonna let that pancetta cook for a few seconds. Now we want it to get a little bit browned. And we want it to get a little bit browned on the edges, but not super brown. We don't want the bottom of the pan to get super crusty. We want a little bit of flavor there, but this is a cream sauce. And so the look of that cream sauce is, you know, it's white from the cream. And so if we get too much caramelization from the pancetta, then it'll turn that sauce brown. So you just want to have it on about medium heat, or if you have it on a higher heat, just keep watch of it. I use a wooden spoon and stir it. And then I've got my sliced shallots and my sliced garlic nearby. So if you guys haven't already, if you don't already have your shallots and your garlic, go ahead and grab those nearby. And then I have a shallot if anybody wanted to see the slicing of the shallot. Is anybody interested in seeing how I slice the shallot? I mean, it's slicing of an onion, but okay, we do have, okay, can you move me back? All right, while my pancetta is cooking, I got requested for the slicing of the shallot. So let's start right here. What's that? So shallot, this is a shallot, and this is a really small shallot. The one I use for this is much larger, but it's like a small sweet onion. And the reason I like shallots, yes, you can leave out shallots for allergy reasons, of course. So, but yeah, you can leave out any of these ingredients, but if you don't like peas, you could substitute another vegetable. If you don't like garlic, then I don't know what's, but if you can't have garlic, then you can leave that out too. And there's lots of substitutions with this. But you're right, yes. Shallots are so flavorful. And shallots, what's great about them is that
Mom says that.
but they're not as strong of a
Mom.
flavor as an onion. So I've got my shallot, right? And here I'm going to, let me do this. So what I do, it's kind of similar to an onion where I just cut off the butt ends like so. And then I'm going to cut it in half. So I've got my 2 halves of my onion. So here's the thing, right? We started off with round edges and now we're at flat edges, which is so much safer than cutting on a round edge, especially if we're drinking wine, which if I'm at home and I'm cooking dinner, I'm always drinking wine. So, so you peel the skin off the shallot. All right, everybody take a quick second and just look at your pancetta, see if it needs a stir. Okay, so I've got my shallot. Now with this size shallot, because it's so small, I don't need to do anything else. If your shallot were larger, you'd maybe even cut it in half again. But this one is pretty small that I'm just gonna, you go from here and I'm just gonna slice. So it's gonna end up being half moons. And my thickness is like maybe a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. So you end up with these nice, even half moon pieces. Right, so I've got this nice pile of shallot. And honestly, if you're more comfortable dicing your shallot, but shallots can be small. So, so I think that, you know, whatever size that you're cutting your shallots, just uniform is fine. I got the question, what size pieces are my pancetta? My pancetta pieces, let me pull it out.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, what was the question?
It's a little kid watching.
Oh, so I've got the pancetta right here. So the question is, what size pieces of pancetta? I actually cheated and bought pre-cut pancetta, even as a chef. You do that sometimes, right? You do what makes the job a little bit easier. So I bought, it's great. Like all sorts of grocery stores have them now, a package of pre-cut pancetta. So let me make sure, I think we've got, let me mute everybody, mute all. Okay, let me make sure everybody's muted. So I've got this pancetta, and so it comes already cut in these nice little, like a little bit smaller than bite-sized chunks. It looks big because I'm putting it up to the camera, but it's like a small bite-size, and it's delicious. So, but like I said, if you can't find the pancetta, you can use bacon. That would probably be my only real substitution for the pancetta. So once the pancetta is starting to brown, I'm going to bring you guys back over here. We're doing a little back and forth, but I want you guys to see. So, there we go. You guys can see, and the edges of my pancetta are just starting to brown, just the very edges, which is what I want. And there's this beautiful fat rendering out. You guys can see there's this beautiful fat. We're gonna save that for later. So we're gonna let this keep on rendering, but make sure you have a container nearby. If you don't already have a container where you save your bacon fat, you can dump this right in with your bacon fat and use it later for roasting potatoes, or like I make egg sandwiches for my husband and I toast the bread in the bacon fat. But this is delicious. It's just as delicious to use this. So I'm gonna grab a container real quick. All right. So the edges of my pancetta are starting to brown. Now I'm going to add my shallots and my garlic. So go ahead and add your sliced shallots and your garlic right into that pan. And just give it a stir. You can kind of break up the shallots a little bit. If they stay in the pieces, you can break them up so they end up in like single slivers. Okay. Yeah. Is it Okay, my kitchen is smelling really, really good right now. So I hope you guys are experiencing the same thing. And those of you that are not cooking right now, sorry, but the kitchen is smelling really, really good. So you guys are missing out. You're gonna definitely have to try this at home if you're not cooking right now, because it's super, super delicious smelling. Now I want to tell you guys the reason that I added the shallots and garlic right now is because I want them to get a little bit, not caramelized, I want them to get what we call a chef's sweating, which means you're cooking them in the fat, but I'm not looking for those shallots and garlic to get caramelized. I just want them to get cooked and sweet. And so I still want my pancetta to cook. If I would have put those in at the beginning with my pancetta, by now my onions and my garlic would be a little bit too cooked and my pancetta wouldn't be cooked enough. So I kind of gauge right when the pancetta is starting to brown is when I put my onions and my garlic. So I'm going to give you guys another view real quick because next we're going to add some wine. So have your bottle of wine ready or your cup of wine. I just pour right from the bottom. So I'm going to give you guys a view of what mine is looking like. And here I'll give you if you can see, right? You can see that the edges are getting golden brown. My shallots and my garlic are starting to be wilty. So what I'm going to do right now is, and it depends on how much of that pancetta fat is in your pan. Right now, it's not a lot, but it's enough that if I kept it in there, it would make the dish kind of greasy. So what I'm going to do now is just pour off some of that fat before I add in the wine. So let me go ahead and show you. And I'm just going to do that by, here, let me tilt it here. Let me see how I can do this. I'm just going to do that by slowly pouring off and using my spoon to drain. So I'm just pouring off some of that fat while I'm holding the pancetta and the onion and the garlic in the pan. And then I'm going to immediately add in my white wine. Okay. You're going to hold the pan off the heat a little bit when you add the wine, because it'll bubble, right? And it's going to start to bubble. You've got that white wine. If you have the white wine on the heat, we don't want anything to flame up for you. So the white wine will immediately start to bubble, which is great. And then you're just going to let that reduce. Right now I have this on medium to high heat. You're going to let that bubble for it to reduce, I don't know, by half. And that's going to happen really quick here. Right? Now, I want to tell you guys, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but I haven't added any salt to this yet, which is really unusual as a chef. A lot of the time we're seasoning things as we go, lots of seasoning, but pancetta has it's a very salty flavor, which is great, but I don't want to add too much salt. So in this particular dish, I'm going to wait until the end to adjust the seasoning because that pancetta has so much great flavor and a lot of that is salt. So I just want to make sure you guys see that, that I haven't added any salt yet, which, like I said, is really quite unusual for a chef. So my wine is already at about a half. I'm going to pour in my cream. And then I'm going to turn the burner off. And then we'll come back to this in a few minutes when our pasta's done. Okay. So that gives our pasta dough a little bit of time to rest. So now, before we make our pasta dough, I want to make sure that you guys have a few things at the ready. So we've got our cutting board. It's still really dry. You're going to want a little bit of flour. And then you're also going to want a cookie sheet. And we're going to take that cookie sheet and we're going to sprinkle a good amount of that semolina and flour all over the cookie sheet. So
Somebody's saying, hold on, when is it reduced? It's okay, Brett.
oh,
It's
and
okay.
don't let, yeah, be
Somebody's
sure the burner
chatting.
is off. You put the cream
Hold
in
on.
your pan.
Mine isn't reduced yet.
They can't hear you, can they?
Maybe.
Right? So the cream is in the pan and then you turn it off for right now. Okay, so I've got my sheet pan, and see, I've got a good amount of flour and semolina on there. This is gonna help our pasta. This is where we're gonna put our pasta as we make it. So we just wanna make sure that it has a place to go so it's not sticky. Now everybody go ahead and unwrap their pasta dough. Mine's feeling nice and soft. So, oh yeah, this is some good dough. What do you guys think? Are you feeling your dough? Does it feel kind of soft, pliable? Yeah, I mean, you should be able to play with it a little bit, but it's not so sticky. It shouldn't be sticking to your hands. It shouldn't be so hard that it feels really tough. So you're gonna go ahead and keep the plastic wrap close by, right? So what you're gonna do is, you're just gonna cut off a piece of that dough. So let me just wipe my knife off here. Okay. Now, I want to make sure everybody's water behind them is coming to a boil, because we're going to just make one or two, and we're just going to taste them. And that way, it's just, you know, if for some reason we feel like the dough needs a little bit more salt or any kind of adjustment with the flour, it's good to do that. We're going to test just a few so we can make the adjustments before we spend our time making all this dough. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to just cut off a small piece of dough. It doesn't really matter what size, just small. And you're just gonna do a quick kind of roll so it's uniform. Just like that. Priorities, guys. And then you're gonna use just a regular butter knife. And you're just gonna cut off a piece that's, so my rope shape here, or my little snake is probably, I'm gonna say, what's that? Maybe a ½ inch thick. The width doesn't matter because you're gonna cut it off. It's maybe about a ½ inch thick. I'm gonna cut a piece that is, oh, let's say, what is that? Maybe about a ½ inch. A small piece. And that might actually even be too big. I'm gonna cut that down. Yeah. So that's a ½ inch. So now we've got this small piece of dough. Here's the trick. You're gonna use your knife. You want the serrated part of your knife away from you. You're gonna use your knife. I'm gonna show you kind of in the air, the motion you're gonna do, and then you're gonna practice. Now, this is the part like I forewarned you earlier. Your orecchiette are not gonna look like the orecchiette that come out of the box when you buy them at the grocery store. Don't expect them to, and that's totally okay. This is handmade pasta, so you know you want it to look a little bit rustic, and also a machine makes those. And so keep in mind, I don't want you guys to get discouraged if it doesn't look exactly like that. It takes some practice, but you're gonna make beautiful pasta. So here's the motion, right? The motion is like pressure right here, and you're just gonna kind of pull towards yourself a little bit. And what's gonna happen is the dough will curl onto the knife. Sometimes it'll curl around. So let me show you. You put pressure and it curls around. So see how my dough has now curled around my knife? The edges are a little bit thicker. Let me do this again. Right, the edges of my dough are a little bit thicker than the center. And then what you do is you turn it the opposite direction and curl it over your finger. Your thumb, your middle finger, your pointer finger, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of what happens to create that little bell shape, right? So like I said, the edges are a little bit thicker, and that's what's gonna help give you your chew. And then you put that on your pan. So let's each make, just for some practice, everybody go ahead and make just that one little snake worth of orecchiette, and then we're gonna test them. So mine, I think that last one that I did, once I've made it, I feel like it was maybe a little bit too much. So this time I just, and it takes trial and error based on like how thick you've rolled this, but you know, how much dough, right? It's curved on my knife, and then I curve it back around on my finger. So it's covering my finger like that. And that becomes my shape. How's everybody feeling about this? Right? Now, when you curl it back, curl it the opposite way of you're pulling it. So if you're pulling it and it goes, or let me do one more here. If you're pulling it and it goes on the knife this way. So the way it bells over the knife is where I then take it and put it on my finger the opposite direction. So I'm pulling it the opposite direction. So when you get like 4 or 5 or however many you want to taste, we're going to do a quick cooking. My dough actually feels a little bit soft, which is fine. All right. Like so. Okay, so I'm going to do a little tester of mine. I'm going to do a little tester piece of some of my, so I have about 5 or 6 orecchiette. I've got my water boiling. I'm going to test a couple of these because I want to taste them. I want to see what the texture is. My dough actually feels a tiny bit soft, and I can't tell honestly if it's really warm here. So it could be just from being in the room temperature, but that's part of why I want to test it, because if I need to, I can knead a tiny bit more flour into it. So if everybody wants to go ahead and drop a few of those orecchiette in your water, and I've got water the same way I would for any other pasta. I've got salt in that water. And then with the rest of my dough that I have sitting on my board, I'm just gonna cover that lightly with a plastic wrap or with the towel so it doesn't dry out while I'm waiting for this to test. And it takes, I mean, no more than like 3 minutes. It actually cooks really fast. So let me grab my fork. I know we're only testing a few right now, but when you go to cook these in a larger batch, you don't want to put too much in the water at once because it'll lower your water temperature and then they'll end up sticking together. So when you do end up cooking a larger batch of these, you want to be sure that you have kind of just enough that cover, like if, you know, when they fall to the bottom, that they just cover the surface of the bottom of your pot. So I like to use a wider pot when I'm cooking pasta so I can get a little bit more in there and then it can have that nice motion of the water. So mine are already floating to the top, which is a good sign here. Okay, I'm going to test one. I might be premature, but I can't, I'm anxious because I really, really like them. So I want to taste mine. And you can see, like, you know, mine aren't perfect looking. Oh, can you see my pot? Yeah. Oh, let me show you. I have a tester pot. My tester pot is small. But the pot behind that, the big pot behind is what I'm going to cook the big batch in. I'm making too many dishes tonight, but too many, I'm like literally dishes to clean. But just to test, I have this small pot. But like I said, the big pot, that one's for all my cooking in a little bit. So I'll be able to do a bigger batch later on. So did everyone go ahead and test their pasta? What do you guys think? Mine's got some nice chew. I actually think I might want a little bit more salt in mine, but I can maybe play around with that with the salt and water. But what do you guys think? Did anyone use something other than semolina flour? Can't tell.
Ours seems a little bit doughy. Maybe we made them too thick and didn't push them down enough.
Yes, so if they're doughy, then yes, then they probably are a little bit thick. So, and so yeah, so that's a good way. That's one of the reasons we're testing. And so it gives you the gauge of how much you want to be, you know, making them thin and how much you're pressing down. So I think that's really good instincts you have there. Is that John that was talking to me?
Yes, thank you.
John, I think that you're right. I think that you need to just have them a little bit thinner.
Okay.
Oh, I missed that last comment. Not bad, just a little bit more cooked. So I think, yeah, if you, and again, depending on your thickness is depending on how much you want to cook them. So I'm adding a little bit more flour to mine, just a tiny bit. I'm kneading it in. Mine was a little bit soft. So, and then how did everyone feel about the salt? And was everybody happy with the salt? And like I said, you know, we can add a little bit more salt in the water, and our pancetta, our dish itself, is going to be nicely seasoned. So I'm not super concerned about it. If I were putting this just with like plain butter, I'd maybe add a little bit more salt to it. Oh, I got a no more salt required. Pancetta did the job. All right, there we go. Okay, so now guys, now it's just a matter of doing some rolling. So we cut and roll. So I usually cut off just like 1 or 2 pieces at a time. And then, like I said, I leave that dough off to the side, just covered in a little bit of plastic wrap. And then I love that some of you guys are doing this together, because obviously it makes the job go a little bit faster if you've got people helping you make orecchiette off to the side. My husband is hidden off to the side, and I'm enlisting him to help. This is a great too. I love seeing I know there's a couple of kids on there. This is something my son really likes making too, which is really fun. And you can, if you're getting the rhythm of it and you have more than one person, you don't have to cut and then press. You can roll out and then cut a handful of pieces like that. You know, if there's more than one of you rolling, this will make the process go even faster. We'll grab another fork here. Another knife. And then you just you roll. All right, so like that, and then back over, like so. And then when you put them on your pan, so I want you guys, hold on, I'm gonna make a couple more. And then I'm gonna show you guys how I have them on my pan, just so you can see a pattern. Oops, was a little sticky. If your cutting board, like my cutting board just got a little tacky right there. If your cutting board gets a little tacky, just go ahead and dust it lightly with flour so the dough doesn't stick to it. All right, there's my going over the top of that. So this amount of dough is gonna make probably a little bit more pasta than what you would need for 4 people, but this freezes really well. So part of the reason I put it on the cookie sheet is so you can then freeze it. You would freeze it directly on the cookie sheet, and then once it's frozen solid, you can put it in a Ziploc bag and just store it in your freezer. So then you have already made orecchiette when you want it. So I'm going to show you guys my pan. You can see, you know, I have them, they're not quite touching, but they're close together. Right, so now's also a really good time to have a sip of wine. Who else is drinking Chardonnay with me today? Right on. So I know that you guys are tuning in from all over the country. So thank you, first of all, for that. But I wanted to let you guys know real quick a couple things while we're all making pasta together. The first is that, I love someone's drinking Petaluma Gap Pinot Noir, nice. The first thing I want to tell you guys is that we will be doing this again in 2 weeks. Justin's going to be making biscuits and gravy. So tune in on that's the 20th, same time. Be looking out for that email. He makes delicious, delicious biscuits. So that is a not to be missed one. And then the other thing I want to tell you guys is that we started this really cool thing. And Fulton Ranch, somebody's drinking Fulton Ranch. That's what I'm drinking. Okay, so we started this really great thing that used to be, at one point, it was kind of just internally for us as people that work for Kendall-Jackson, but now it's kind of open to the public, and it's this awesome thing called Your Wine Store. So if you go to yourwinestore.com, it's basically a way for you guys to get not just Kendall-Jackson brands, but all of our brands. So you can go on there and you can get all your favorite Kendall-Jackson wines. And if you're local, like if you're in Napa or Sonoma County, we'll deliver to you for free. which is really cool. If you're not in Napa or Sonoma County, don't worry. We have a flat rate shipping of $15 per case, which is awesome. And it can be a mixed case of whatever wines you want. So it's a really great opportunity to try out some of your favorite Kendall-Jackson wines, maybe see some of the other brands that we have that you may not know of or that you love. And it's really, really great. It's a really unique opportunity to get to try a lot of different wines. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew about that. So I just saw there was a question and I missed it. I'm sorry. If someone just asked me a question, will you repost that one more time? You guys are all concentrating so much on making your orecchiette. How's everybody doing? Is your pan getting full? My pan's getting nice and full. But I do have my husband helping me a little bit, so. It's his birthday today and I'm making him help me make orecchiette. So, does anybody else have any questions too right now? Oh, how long will the video remain on the KJ blog? You know, that's a really good question, Richard. And I'm not sure. I think it'll be on there for a long time. And oh, we got a happy birthday for you, Chris. Thank you. He says thank you. I think that this video will remain on the blog for a while. And I think that that we have access to it. So if it's something that, you know, you don't see up there, it takes a little bit of time for us to get it. So I think it'll go up in like a day or two, but I think it'll be up there for a while. I know that Justin's video that he did, the tortilla española, was still up there yesterday when I looked, so. All right. I'm almost ready to start putting some to make my sauce. So.
Just so you know, on the website, on the Kendall-Jackson website, both the tortilla española and your gnocchi recipe are still there.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't look for the gnocchi, but that's wonderful. Oh, you're right. I saw the gnocchi recipe. I didn't see the video. So that's wonderful. Yeah, and I think that, you know, these are, I mean, we think they're pretty cool, and we love that we're getting this interaction with you guys and doing this fun stuff. So my hope is that it stays up there for a while because I think it's pretty fun. Okay, so I had someone say they think that their gnocchi are, or sorry, their orecchiette are small. So hold up. Is that you, Delia Swan? I don't think those are too small. And here's the thing. If they're all the same size, then you're fine. I think that as long as you're keeping them all that size, you're totally fine. They can be as big or as small as you want, although smaller would be better than bigger. But again, just as long as they are a uniform size, I think you're good to go. Because again, the goal here is for them to cook in a uniform way. Yeah, I think that you're right. It does look a little bit small, but I'm not super concerned about it. Like mine kind of fits over, you can see, like it fits just over the top of my finger, right? Like, but I'm not a stickler for that. I'm more of a stickler of if they are all the uniform size, and so they, you know, so they cook even. Now, I'm going to show you guys this next part of the pasta, but one, if you're ready to eat, then you should go along and make this along with me. If you're not ready to eat your dinner yet, what I would prefer is for you to kind of watch and then do this part when you're ready to eat, because it's a cream sauce. And so I want you guys to be able to eat it when it's nice and hot and it's not broken. So I'm going to show you the next stage of the sauce and the pasta. The other thing is, a lot of the time, if you have time to let your pasta rest after you've made them, that's a good thing too. So like I said earlier, you know, if you were making this again, maybe give yourself time to let the original dough rest for about half an hour. And then the same thing with the pasta after you make them, that it's never a bad idea to let that rest for about half an hour or to an hour before you cook it. In this case, we're going to cook it too. So, I'm just going to make 2 or 3 more here, just so I've got a nice good amount. My water up and boiling, and then I'm going to bring you guys back to my stove. But now, before I start cooking the sauce, does anybody have any other questions about this part? Okay. Move this over. Okay, so now is when I'm going to use the large pot. So, will you help me move this over? Okay. So I've got on my stove here, I've got my large pot of water and I've got the pan right where I've got the cream sauce in it. Nearby, I've got my bowl of fresh peas. So I'm going to turn my sauce back on. And I want it to be on like medium heat. My water's boiling. I'm going to go ahead and add my pasta. When you add your pasta to the water, remember all that flour that we put on the pan? You don't want to just dump that in because then all that flour gets into your pasta water. So you want to just, as quickly as you can, use your hands, or you can even use a spatula. I'm a chef, so I use my hands. I feel like they're my greatest tool. And get your pasta in the water. But you don't want to dump all that flour in. Okay? So the amount that I had on my cookie sheet is about, I don't know, I'm going to say I probably have, what'd you say, maybe 40, maybe a little bit more in here. I have about 40 or so gnocchi in my pot. That's what fit. Now, I'm going to show you the sides of my pan are just starting to, my cream are just starting to come to a boil. What I want here is I'm letting this get thick. Okay. The other thing you want to have nearby is your cheese, because we're going to add a little bit of the cheese to when we add the peas to the sauce. That helps that sauce to get thick, and it'll help it to really nicely coat the pasta. So, you know what? I've been seeing a lot of people have been making fresh sourdough bread. And I'm not a bread baker, so it's not my thing. I'm lucky that I know people that are making bread, and they've been kind enough to gift me some on my doorstep. But I know a lot of people are making sourdough bread these days. And I was thinking about this earlier because I have a friend that dropped off a loaf of sourdough bread. And I thought, what perfect timing, because this sauce is like the perfect dip your bread in after you've eaten the pasta sauce. So if you happen to have any of that sourdough bread around, or really any bread, this is going to be that perfect sauce to use that bread to really lap it up. All right, so my sauce is starting to boil a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my peas. And I'm going to add my cheese. I'm grating my cheese right into there. Now, I used fresh peas. It's springtime, and it's a really great time to be using things like fresh peas. If you can't find fresh peas, frozen peas are fine. Just if you use frozen peas, don't put them in from frozen. Be sure that they are defrosted and drained well, because they have a lot of liquid, and we don't really want that liquid in our sauce. So if you end up using frozen peas, just remember to, sometimes I even run them under cold water a little bit to help them defrost, and then put them in a little strainer to make sure that they are not super wet and they don't make my sauce wet, because I definitely want this sauce to be nice and thick. So you guys can see, I don't know if you guys can see already, like my sauce is getting creamy and thick. Now, it's really important right now to taste your sauce, because now we want to taste for salt, and we're definitely going to add some black pepper. Oh man, it's tasting good. I am not going to add any salt to mine, surprisingly, and I love salt, but I think I'm going to not add any salt to mine quite yet. But I'm definitely going to add a little bit of fresh black pepper, and I'm going to finish this with black pepper too. But for right now, I'm just going to do a couple turns of some fresh black pepper from my mill. My pasta is just about ready here. I'm just giving this a quick stir. Now, if you guys taste your peas and you used fresh peas, if you tasted a pea, they're probably not quite done yet, which is good, because the idea here is that we also want to get our pasta into the sauce just to let it cook in there a couple extra seconds too. So my pasta is, I'm going to say, about 90% of the way there. I'm going to go ahead and use a small strainer because if I want to make more pasta, I can. I'm going to use a small strainer, and I'm going to take my pasta out of the water. I'm going to make sure I drain it really well. I'm going to go right into that pan with the peas and the cream and the pancetta. You can strain this in a colander if you find that to be easier. That's fine. Right? And then I'm just going to make sure that's nice and coated. Because what's going to happen here is that not only will the starch from that pasta help to additionally thicken up the sauce, that pasta cooking in the sauce will start to absorb some of that delicious flavor from that sauce. And that'll just become like, it's just going to become all this wonderfulness in one. So I'm just going to let this cook for maybe a quick minute. While this is finishing up, I've got fresh herbs in this. And on the recipe, I know I said you could do tarragon, dill, basil. And basically, you could do any combination. I also realized I have some fresh mint growing in my garden. So I grabbed a little bit of everything. So I'm just going to take a quick second and chop that up because we're going to add that in right at the end of this. So let this simmer on just a medium low so it's simmering. Everybody go chop your fresh herbs real quick and bring it over to the stove. So I just did a rough chop and mixed them all together. But mint and peas are a really, really delicious combination. So as I was out in my garden grabbing the tarragon, I realized I had some mint out there and thought, why not throw some of that in? So I want you guys, before I add the herbs, I want to show you guys this sauce, right? Because I think we are there. See this pan? You can, right? When I go like that, a little bit of sauce runs off. It's still really thick, but it's this great kind of ratio of pasta to sauce. I think we're there. Now, if you want it, if you feel like your sauce is a little bit thick right now, you can let it continue to simmer a little bit. If you want to go big and like get really luscious and decadent, you can add a nice, spoonful of butter right now too, and that'll just really like hit you hard. If you want more cheese, you can add more cheese at this point. I like to add a little bit of cheese on the top when I'm ready to eat it. So I think we're about there, ready to, I'm going to go ahead and add my herbs in real quick here. And then we're going back and I'll show you guys how I plate this up. Okay, so I've got my bowl, right? I just added my fresh herbs right now. I want them to still smell and taste fresh, so I add them in just at the end. Oh my gosh, this smells so good. Oh, you guys, right? So I've got a little bit of that cream sauce cooling right off the edges. That's that stuff I'm gonna eat with the sourdough bread in a little bit. And then I do I do a little bit of fresh grated cheese right on the top. And I like fresh cracked pepper on my pasta. So I just want to finish that off with a little bit of cracked pepper. And then the best part, we eat it. Is that parm? You know what? I'm using Pecorino Romano, but you can use Parmesan cheese and that's fine too. If it's what you have, especially right now. I know that everybody's not going to the grocery store as often, and we're kind of using some of what we have in our freezer. And that's why I said, if you have peas or you don't have peas or you have access to other things, you can mix and match some of this stuff. But okay, have your wine nearby, your fork. Does everyone have some of theirs cooked? Or did anyone else cook along with me? I'd love to see. Oh my God, I see one right there. Oh, thank you. It does. It smells amazing. That looks beautiful. Oh my God, that looks so good. You guys, this looks great. Delaney, your orecchiette look awesome. Lisa Goldberg, that pasta looks fantastic. This is looking great, guys. You're all hired. I am going to try a sip of my wine and then have a bite of my pasta. Oh my God. My husband had to get in the back of the shop because he wanted some pasta. Oh, you guys, this is so tasty. And especially with this wine, I'm so glad we picked this. So this is the Fulton Ranch Chardonnay. This is from a vineyard really close to the Kendall-Jackson Wine Center. Oh my God, this is such a good pairing. Is anyone else tasting along with me and enjoying? This is really, really good. It's definitely decadent, but so worth it. Yeah, oh my God. Looks great.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
For taking the time to tune in. Like I said, in 2 weeks, Justin's doing biscuits and gravy. Be sure and check out yourwinestore.com. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email. I'm happy to answer any questions. For those of you that are making it later, send a picture in. Send a picture in. We love hearing the feedback. Cheers, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
I think it's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Honey?